from West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
Support for the Legislature Today is provided by the following.
The West Virginia Higher Education Policy Commission, working with students and families to improve college access and student success for a better West Virginia.
Good evening, I'm Andrea Lanham, and this is the Legislature Today. It's Friday, and that means I get to sit around this table with some of my State House colleagues and chat about the week that was and ponder about the week to come. Joining me is our regular Friday guest, Brad McElhenney of West Virginia Metro News, and making his first appearance on the Legislature Today, Ryan Quinn, education reporter for the Pulitzer Prize-winning newspaper, the Charleston Gazette-Mail. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. So let's start off with the governor's press release last night.
Oh, you know where to start. Okay.
Exactly. Where he was asking people to please stop the rumors on his health. And he said in part, I've had no recent doctor's appointments, but the last time I did, they told me I'm in wonderful health, except for being a little chunky and that I have incredible stamina. What's your reaction to this?
Yeah, well, so these rumors were circulating yesterday, and first of all, this is just a gossip mill, the entire place is. But you hear something like that about someone as high profile as the governor, arguably the most important person in state government, you gotta check it out. So some of us, I don't know who, we were trying to be discreet and asking around about it. And speaking for Metro News, the answer we got is there's nothing to it, he's in good shape, everything's fine. Didn't ask the governor himself, but asked those around him, those who would know. And we were going to leave it alone. Just take them at their word. And then this press release hits all of our inboxes at 20 till 7 last night. And it's the words that you said. And at that point, it has become official. And we felt like we had to do something about it. So we went both with radio and with internet to describe the story. The governor's health in context has been an issue because over the summer, right after he had fired Chief of Staff Nick Casey, he was hospitalized out of state, and it took a while for that to come to light. So these questions about what is his health and what kind of shape is he in have continued, and they've come back from the first time in August.
So let's talk about teachers now. This is more than a rumor. A strike is being discussed. Let's take a look at Christine Campbell of the AFT West Virginia at a rally earlier this week.
It's time for everyone to speak out for our teachers, our service personnel, our public employees, and most importantly, for our children. They are depending on us to make West Virginia a better place for them. We can do it, but we have to do it together. They're saying we aren't paying attention. Well, we're more than paying attention now. We're taking action. We will hold our representatives who don't value our working families accountable today, tomorrow, next week, next month, and especially at the ballot box in November.
So Ryan, what are you hearing about this potential strike?
Yeah, they keep bringing up the word, and they'll have qualifiers on it. I'm talking about both the West Virginia Education Association Union and also the AFT. And they'll bring up the word, which I haven't heard in years past, and then they'll say, but next steps need to be taken. We need to start showing up at school board meetings. This is not the first step. That's especially what happened, I think it was at the rally Monday by the West Virginia Education Association, led by Dale Lee. But yeah, I mean, I've been in this state working for the Gazette-Mail since March 2014, and there have not been, significant or any really statewide across the board raises for teachers. But I have not heard the S word, as people call it. Last year, there was House Bill 2711, which was the governor's big education bill to, it got rid of RESAs, it got rid of the Office of Education Performance Audit, it banned the standardized test Smarter Balance, and it originally had a teacher pay raise in it of 2%, which equated to across the board, the way they calculate it's not, you can argue whether it's actually 2% or not, $808 per person. But it got taken out of that big bill, and yet the rest of the bill passed anyway. And so this session, Justice in a State of the State suggested a 1% raise and 1% for the years following that. And it seems like teachers, especially with the cuts to PEIA benefits, their health insurance, those are continuing on, and they don't see a 1% raise in that context as sufficient. I think there was some expectation that earlier this week at Senate Finance that there would be some possible changes to the bill to make it a higher percentage increase for teachers, but they simply locked in the 1% annual raises for this year and further years into law. So codifying that basically.
Yeah, it's a really interesting issue too, and I remember hearing that in Senate Finance where they were codifying over a 5-year period, which they said was always the governor's intention. Brad, have you heard anything about this? I know you covered the rally, and I know you had covered some of the other.
Yeah, I was at the WVEA rally that I think Ryan was at too, and I'm interested to hear you say that you had not heard the S word, which is strike. Until then, and I heard that, the word walkout also was used, and I thought, is that normal? Is that a word that just comes up as a matter of course? So my ears perked up, and you know, what was a little burning ember at that point it feels like it's starting to catch fire.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. It was an emergency meeting yesterday for AFT members for Kanawha County, and there was like 100 that showed up to this evening meeting. And because I had to get back and work on other things, you know, I didn't get to ask around to see what had brought everybody out, but it seems that there's a different sort of feeling around this situation if legislators don't provide a teacher pay raise or only provide a pay raise of 1%. You know, there hasn't been a strike since 1990, you know, the year after I was born. So it's it'd be quite an uncommon occurrence.
Now switching gears a little bit, Brad, we also had a bill yesterday to make its way out of the House Health Committee that would eliminate Medicaid coverage of abortion. We're seeing women's groups around the Capitol, and this is one of those volatile situations. What's your take on this bill? Yeah,
you know, this was making it from one committee to the next, but you feel like this was the first step in something that's going to become more controversial. Judiciary in the House is next. This was changing the definition within state law, potentially to say abortions had been legal if they were considered medically necessary. This would change it to the circumstances of if it would save the life of the mother or the life of the baby. For as serious as it is, it wasn't a really long meeting. Delegate Barbara Fleischauer, a Democrat from Monongalia County, was notable for asking what I thought were some pretty illuminating questions about further how would this be defined. So if the mother were having psychological problems or was in the view of the doctor suicidal, would those events be covered under protecting the life of the mother? And the answer from counsel in the moment was no, it would need to be something that would be a direct result of giving birth, not necessarily psychological effects. Some of the Democrats tried to amend in cases of incest or rape, and that was voted down by the broader committee. So this issue, I think, as it advances from judiciary, then potentially to the House floor, as you alluded, is going to be controversial.
Yeah, that's for sure. Ryan, talk to us about Senate Bill 284, which is the Free Community College and ACE program bill. I know you have covered this pretty extensively.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to it, so it needs even more of a look from myself and others. But yeah, I heard from, I guess this is the end, today is the end of just the second full week of the session, and it's already hit the Senate floor, and I think got past first reading today, so it could pass by Tuesday, a full side of the legislature. This thing has been moving pretty fast. I remember we first heard about it, Carmichael's, Senate President Carmichael's pursuance of this bill in late December. And that was, we had seen it at the end of an Associated Press article that, this reporter had just put this at the very end. And we're like, whoa, a Republican Senate President is, pushing free community college. And so, I think it was Senate Education Chairman Kenny Mann told me last week that that Carmichael wanted it out of both committees that it was assigned to, Education and Finance, by Thursday. It got out of Finance on Wednesday, with Chairman Craig Blair at one point interrupting John Unger to say that we're trying to move this bill through and there'll be time for amendments later. There's still a lot to look at in the bill, and I think I've heard that there's some opposition from four-year institutions who feel that this could cut into perhaps their tuition that's paid to them, because it's redirecting kids to two-year colleges. And I don't know how it's going to fare on the House side with concerns about finances and how much is this going to cost.
Now, earlier this week, the House passed single-member districts after a little bit of debate. Let's take a look at both sides of this debate.
Single-member districts entrench incumbents. You want to look at your 20-year members, they're in single-member districts. In Kanawha County, to my knowledge, not one single person in a single-member district has ever been defeated in an election, either in a primary or a general election. Now, doing this without term limits makes no sense, because the reality of single-member district and the entrenchment of incumbents is that no one has the ability to overcome the presumption that it's their seat. And what you have is you don't have new candidates and new blood coming into those districts.
I've had the pleasure of being a member of a multi-member district, later a three-member district in the 32nd, and now as a single-member district in the 40th district. And I can tell you that I see tremendous advantages to having a single-member district in terms of my relationship with my constituents, because I can go to so many more events, so many more things in that district. I can have so much more single one-on-one contact with individuals in that district. I guarantee you I've had more of those discussions as a single-member district representative than I had, because there was just such a large area to try to cover.
So Brad, you've been covering this. What's your reaction to this debate?
Yeah, well, would it bowl you over to learn that most of those who voted no against that bill are multi-member district representatives? As you heard, the argument in favor of the single-member districts is smaller districts, a little more intimacy, meant to be neighborhood districts, possibly less cost to run in those districts rather than having to go across town or across your county. The arguments against are that multi-member districts mean that the delegates can work together. If you have an issue that one delegate won't respond to, you can go to another if you're a constituent. And then it was interesting, both sides sort of took up the cause of women and minorities, with the multi-member district folks saying that if you've got 4 or 5 in a district, then it means those who may be less likely to be elected have a better chance. And then the opposite side of the same argument coming from those who advocated for single-member districts, saying that neighborhoods that may be more higher minority populations may have a chance to elect a greater number of minorities. So those who wanted the single member districts won the day, and it's been going that way in West Virginia for a while. I think that bill still has to pass the Senate, but of course it's the House's races, so I don't think the Senate is really going to weigh in against it. And the other thing that is associated with this is that there's a separate bill, but related, about after the 2020 census.
The Independent Commission.
How does West Virginia decide how to redistrict?
Oh, yeah, that too. They have to come back and they have to decide.
Yeah, and so the Independent Commission that you mentioned has been advocated both by some Democrats and some Republicans. The most prominent Democrat weighing in for it has been Mike Pushkin saying over and over, we need to do this, and the most prominent Republican pushing for it has been John Overington, a 34-year delegate from Berkeley County.
Right. Now, Ryan, talk to us a little bit about House Joint Resolution 103. There's been so many education initiatives that go through, and this one was actually taken up by, was it House Judiciary this morning, and they assigned it to subcommittee?
Yes, it was John Schott, the chairman. He said, even before people started asking questions about the bill, that he planned to assign it to subcommittee. Then he started getting questions. I don't know if they were all Democrats, but people were questioning whether this bill, which would put on the ballot a constitutional amendment for voters to elect 6 out of the 9 state school board members, and also would allow the legislature to actually shoot down or amend state board rules, which they can't currently. They can do it for other agencies, including the higher ed agencies. But yeah, there were questions in the committee about, how are these districts going to work? Is there going to be outside financing for these elections? Is there going to be outside money coming in, or is there going to be public financing? Different questions like that, and none of those are spelled out in the constitutional amendment that would go before voters. Instead, it would leave those details up to legislators to set at a later date if voters ultimately approved the constitutional amendment. Now, it has to pass both sides of the legislature by a 2/3 vote before it even gets to voters. So, in subcommittee for now.
We're all hearing the complaints about PEIA's wellness program, the Ghost 365. Let's listen to Delegate Spinagle, who rallied on the House floor yesterday.
Over the last 3 years, we have failed to fund it. We have failed to fix it. Last year, this body passed Senate Bill 221 through 2 working members off the PIA Financial Board, reorganized it. People were supposed to be on there were representatives for the teachers, representatives for public employees. You tossed them, reconfigured it, put bean counters on there so they can maximize the money for the state and cut services to the individuals in the state of West Virginia. This year, so what do we get? Go 365. 365. We got tears, crocodile tears in here talking about, well, how could this be? How could this board be intrusive? How can we possibly go out there and see that they're taking your personal information and calculating it? I am shocked that now by policy, we are implementing pre-existing conditions. We look at your blood scores. If you're an individual that's had cancer, is going through and they look back at your blood scores, guess what? You get a $500 deductible penalty. Your premiums go up, $25 a month. Go 365. You got a Fitbit? Got to turn that information over to them. How about Nanny State 365?
Now, Brad, just briefly, give me your reaction on what you've been hearing so far on this program.
All right, well, first of all, Delegate Spinagle, I asked him once, do you have country preachers in your lineage? He said no, but he does have country lawyers in his lineage, and that's where you get that. He's a Democrat, but I have heard the same remarks from Republicans who are concerned about the privacy of public employees. And when we talk about the possibility of a teacher strike, it's not just the pay that those folks are talking about, it's the increases in their health care costs, and this is all correlated.
Now, a bill to eliminate the film industry tax credits passed the House today. Let's take a look at some of that debate before the vote.
So we've done our homework enough that if you're going to apply for the tax credit in West Virginia, not only do you have to come here, meet the parameters, film in West Virginia, do those things, which is welcoming, but at the end of the day, when you actually produce the film, when millions and millions of people get to see it, it has to read filmed in West Virginia at the end of it. That's a great thing. That instills pride. When you watch a movie like Super 8 and you see the credits roll and you say, yeah, that's great, filmed in West Virginia, it gives you that pride again. And we're just saying, no thanks. So I just don't know where we're coming from with this, Mr. Speaker. I don't understand the philosophy behind it. We're playing with fuzzy math on something we know derives a net gain. But I do know that if we were to be nominated for an Oscar here, it would definitely be for Best Comedic Performance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
So what this comes down to, two components. It's a return on our state dollars. And I'm here to tell you, we have better places to put dollars than for this particular credit. We don't need to be in the business of putting $1 out and getting 70-some cents back on that dollar. We aren't elected to do that. And lastly, it's all about priority. Any expenditure that we do here as a body, we've got to prioritize it. We've heard about the nurse need down south. We've heard about our teachers in the pay raise. Let me put those two up versus a tax credit. Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of the bill.
Now, Brad, you and I were both in the House when that debate was going on.
Wherever we shared snacks. It went on for 2 hours.
You did have really good snacks with you too, so that was a help. What was your reaction to that debate?
Aside from the length of it, for every TV or film ever associated with West Virginia was name dropped over this debate that actually lasted 2 days because they started and went for an hour yesterday, cut it off when they weren't sure how the vote was going to go, and then did another 2 hours today. You heard Democrats saying that they think that whatever the value is of this tax credit, it's worthwhile. Republicans essentially saying we've got a $5 million line item in the budget, and we think that $5 million line item can be better spent. And that's the argument that won the day.
Now, Ryan, I know this is something that you've been covering, a bill to eliminate the position of the Secretary of Education and the Arts. That passed through House Finance today. And of course, we note that West Virginia Public Broadcasting is an agency within that department. Let's listen to what Secretary Gail Manchin said following her appearance at the committee today.
The premise of the bill was to restructure principal leadership training. And that was to go back to the Department of Education, and not a mandated training from the top down, but rather from the grassroots up. And while that's the premise of the bill also totally dismantles the Office of Education and the Arts. And I think that became more relevant today when they saw that it truly was one was an educational issue. The other is really an executive issue, because this is a cabinet position of the governor, and the governor appointed me, asked me to serve and appointed me as the secretary, and now this House committee is just dismantling that, saying that they can do away with the cabinet, do away with the secretary. The issue with that is that we are much more than principal leadership training.
Now, Ryan, this is something that you've been covering. Tell me your thoughts on this.
It is, like she said, there are two pieces to this bill that seem to be stuck together, and some people argue that it's unfair. Larry Rowe from Kanawha, he's argued that it's actually unconstitutional, the fact that it deals with two different topics. But yes, there is a transfer of multiple agencies out of the Department of Education and the Arts, which would be eliminated. One of those agencies is the Center for Professional Development, which would be reestablished under the State Department of Education. And so you could argue then that the professional development aspect of the bill actually does relate to the fact that an agency is moving that in regards to that. Others, like public broadcasting, would become independent agencies within the executive branch, and Manchin's position would be eliminated. Spinagle brought that up. He said in this morning's meeting that it seems like only she was going to be eliminated by this bill, and argued that that was unfair.
Now, Brad, we only have a few seconds left. Tell me a little bit about what you might cover next week. What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, natural gas co-tenancy bill, which deals with the rights of landowners and royalty owners, and also intermediate court of appeals, which would produce a layer of the court system between the Supreme Court and Circuit Court.
All right. Brad McElhenney with West Virginia Metro News and Ryan Quinn of the Charleston Gazette-Mail. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you.
That does it for West Virginia Public Broadcasting's coverage from the state capitol this week. Join us for the Legislature Today on Monday, when we'll discuss various budget policies with Garrett Ballingy of the Cardinal Institute and Ted Bettner of the West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy. I'm Andrea Lanham. Thanks for watching and have a good evening.